Let's review common data set information for the University of Virginia and for the University of North Carolina. Starting with the University of Virginia, we see three items marked very important, beginning with academic rigor, class ranking, and academic GPA. For University of North Carolina, we see that academic rigor, letters of recommendation, and the application essays are marked very important. Now, not every school even considers or even thinks that letters of recommendation are important or very important. We definitely think that if any school offers you the opportunity to include letters of recommendation, that you need to consider who's going to write the best and why. And also consider what the university suggests. So if the university suggests that you include a STEM recommender because you're applying to engineering, or a business or someone related to business administration if you're going to undergraduate business program, such as at UVA, Darden, or UNC, then you should definitely take that advice from the university. Now, outside of that, we see that both schools do mark very important for character and personal qualities, for non-academic criteria, and also for state residency. So that's important to remember because Virginia and University of North Carolina are both the flagship universities for their states, Virginia and North Carolina respectively. Let's go ahead and look at the GPA information for these schools. The bar is set high. Again, these are very important. The academic rigor, at least for both schools, and then GPA is either very important or important for these schools. So it is very difficult to get in without a 4.0 or higher. We see that the averages for UVA and UNC are 4.2 and a 4.47. Obviously, those are weighted scores, but the bar is set high. In addition to that, we see that the class ranking for UNC quite high, having 66% of students who are admitted and enrolled submit that information. For top 10% in both UVA and UNC, 85 we're looking at, 85% for UVA, and then for UNC, 74%. Again, it's very difficult to get into either school if you are under the top 50% of your graduating class. All right, so let's look at the standardized exam scores. So for UVA, a maximum amount of 71% of students included their scores. Meanwhile, at UNC, 56% is the max. Now, for the testing policy for both schools, UVA is still test optional for students who are going into the fall 2025. So if you're watching this video, you're probably applying for that admissions period and you're good. It's still test optional for that school. It's up to you to submit your scores depending on where your score lands. And this is a good scale to consider on whether or not you should include your scores. As you can see for UVA, very few students were admitted who had under a 30 on the ACT composite, and even fewer, of course, if we're going under 24. For UNC, same thing. 98% of students had at least a 24 on the ACT composite. So one thing, though, about UNC is a week or two ago, before this video, they just announced that if a student is applying with less than a 2.8 GPA, then they will have to include their standardized exam scores to UNC. So just reviewing the GPA. Now, if you're applying with a 2.8 to UNC, according to this, 0% of applicants who were admitted and enrolled had a 2.8 for UNC. It is an interesting rule they just made for that. So the admit rate is 0. However, something that definitely tells us that they're willing to consider if you have lower than a 3.0 or rather lower than a 2.8 if your SAT or ACT score is high. So definitely these stats will change for UNC in the future. We're expecting that, and definitely put emphasis on preparing for the SAT or ACT if you're going into your senior year with under 2.8 and if you're interested in University of North Carolina.